this brief, and I won't go in and talk about the work, but it wouldn't have been possible, I don't think, without some fundamentals that sit at the heart of the relationship. And the first one of those, I think, is that between client and agency, there's a genuine passionate shared belief that we are working together for a reason, and that is because we believe that creativity is a driver of growth, and one of the last unfair competitive advantages, if you like. So I say that briefly, but actually that's incredibly important, because the minute that you realise that's what you're here to do together, if you look at all your conversations through that lens, all conversations cease to be subjective. They become objective, and you cease to be having an argument about the artistic merit of a particular execution or idea, and you start to have conversations about, is it going to help us drive the business forward? Is it as creative as it needs to be in order to do the things we want it to do? So I suppose just to really underline, multiple times, the need to really understand what you're both trying to achieve, both out of the whole relationship, but out of the project you're working on together. That's the first thing. I think, I hope if you guys are all working with your agencies, you take this one for granted, so maybe not dwell on it, but a true deep understanding of your customers, of the brand and the benefits, both emotional and functional, I suppose, and the relationship between those things. So understanding how consumers interact with the brand and with the products within that brand is super important. And you can never share too much, I suppose, in terms of helping agencies really get under the skin of that. I think as agencies, we're curious for the truth, and we're after partners in crime to help us really sort of forage for that. Third thing I'd say is this project, just like all of the best projects, it required a lot of hard conversations. It required a lot of trust, and that doesn't just happen. That requires I suppose an understanding and ability to create a safe space for us to be able to have those kind of conversations. I always say the highest performing teams are the ones that are best at arguing without falling out. And I think this is a great example of where we were together because we knew we wanted to get to something truly creative that was going to drive growth. We were happy to really, really get down and challenge each other about how we were going to do that. I just think this bit of advice is super important. Anyone can make an idea better at each stage of the process. So I think once upon a time, the idea seemed to be to put an idea on the table and change it as little as possible and defend it against the oncoming armies of people that wanted to destroy it. But actually, this is an example of a project that tells the real story about how creative work becomes brilliant, which is if you all strive to make it better with each interaction and with each sort of hurdle you go through, right from the conceptual stages, right from writing the brief, right through to the final execution. I mean, Elliot will tell you how annoying I was about the end frames being right, just because we just wanted it to be as good as it possibly could be. But within the team, what we created was an environment where everybody just wanted that. We wanted input from anybody who we thought could make it better. And then finally, there's only so much that research can teach you before you've got to make a decision about moving forward. So I do think that whilst uncomfortable, there's a moment where you have to be prepared to step off the ledge and do that, knowing you've used your gut, you've used all the evidence you've got, but use your gut to decide whether you think this has got something. Believe in it, and of course that's when brilliant things can happen. But I think the fear of failure is sometimes something that gets in the way of brilliant work. So as senior marketers, the the need to sort of embrace that and walk into it rather than sort of reverse out of it. I would say that's always a feature of the strongest work. So look, that's probably all I'll say at this. Jim, anything else I should have said from? Beautiful. Right, there you go. I'll hand over to the guys who will actually tell.
Thank you, Zav. Thank you. Hi, guys. I'm Becky Verano. I head up all of the agencies at Reckitt. The creative agenda. I also am in charge of upskilling. We've just launched a new EdTech academy, which is great. And I'm also in charge of all of the spend globally and how we allocate that and save as much as we can. But I'm here to talk about my favorite part of my role, which is the creative side, representing the UK team. Most of you may not know Reckitt. We're a kind of less famous Procter and Unilever, but we have got some incredibly famous brands: Vanish, Airwick, Dettol, which I actually had the honor to lead during COVID, which you can imagine was a very humbling experience, and a whole plethora of brands. I'm actually going to talk. We're going to talk today. I'm so surprised to be on the stage, to be honest, to be talking about one of our less sexier categories. No one wanted to work on fabric treatment when I was marketing director of the UK. All right, it is a tough segment to market, and it's a segment that only has around about 15% penetration. All right, so but the story to the trade is very clear. You know, you get a laundry basket full, you're going to get, and you add this on top. You get laundry into your basket, you add this on top, you're already increasing massively your basket weight. So it's a really valuable category as well, and I guess, most of you I'm hoping you've read the long and short of it. It's one of my favorite reports out there. But this advert, we've done a lot of adverts that are in the kind of second bucket. I class them as harvesting existing demand. So those are the people who are predisposed to the category already. This campaign's job was to try and reach those who are not predisposed to the category, to try and create future demand and to create a conversation and to bring people into the brand who weren't before. I'm going to caveat this. You're going to see some wonderfully emotional advertising. I cry every time. Please, I apologize in advance if I do, but I'm incredibly emotional. It's a very emotional campaign, and it works. It works. Okay?
When you say it works, it moves business.
It moves business, drives penetration. Okay, and it's the right thing to do. Okay, so we'll go through a little bit the journey that Elliot and I have been on. Elliot and I have been working together since I've been on the role for 2 years, and actually it all started with us having a vision, and this was set by our CMO, who I report into, and that vision was, look, if we're going to do sustainability, we want to do sustainability that drives value. And we want to come up with a very unique model, because you'll hear everyone talking about purpose. We've tried to kind of, I guess, make it more systemic into the brand strategy. And this, for me, is the most powerful chart. If you can move on to the next. Which is literally the way Reckitt does marketing in one simple chart. And you always have to make it simple when you've got 3,000 marketeers in the organization. It starts with actually having a superior solution. The product is still absolutely fundamental, and it's got to be superior. So that has not gone away. That will always be the core of marketing. But actually, what we decided to do at Reckitt was we decided to tag every single one of our brands to an SDG. Everyone knows what SDGs are, I hope. The UN SDG goals, there's 17 of them. Ultimately, that is the plan for our planet. You can't go wrong if you're backing one of these. So we needed to make sure that we were going for something that was meaningful. And what we did for each of the brands was we connected that superior solution to the right SDG goal, and then we turned it into a brand fight. So we're going to talk about Vanish now, and we'll talk about which one we chose. Let me give you another example. Oh, you're one step ahead. One other example I'd give you is on Vanish, which is also led by Havas. And on that one, we chose SDG number 6. No, where is it?
12? Is it 12?
No, I'm going to just to give you the Vanish one. Just to give you another example, because you're going to see lots of examples. So Vanish detergents, washing machine detergents, dishwasher detergents. These products are really good products. Who's got a dishwasher in the room? Yeah. How many of you still do hand dishwashing? Yeah. And how many of you still pre-rinse your dishes before putting them in the dishwasher? Right. So using a dishwasher uses about 90% less water. If you still pre-rinse your dishes, you're using about 3 times, 4 times more water than you should be. So our pivot was to say, look, we're going to help with the water scarcity that we're facing in the world. And we're going to try and push the fact that at least with your dishwashing moments in the home, we're going to make it as optimal as possible. And then we're going to say, our products are so good, you don't need to rinse your dishes. And that, when we've measured it, has proven that it works. But today we're here to talk about Vanish, and this was number 12, responsible consumption and production. There's a lot of debate to choose which one to go for, because you have to be genuine and you have to make sure that you're not going to be going into the purpose washing world. So this is really what we ended up on. And how did this interpret into the Vanish kind of footprint, as we call it? Well, to start with, you define your product role. We remove stains. We've known that. We've been removing stains for a number of years, and we revive clothes. But our brand purpose, therefore, led us up to we want to help our clothes live longer lives. And then obviously we have to trigger a behavior change. So we need to motivate everyone to get more wear from their clothes. We know the idea of circular fashion today is incredibly on trend. Not just on trend, but very important. So this is where the brand was going. And you can see on one side, look, this is really good for the planet. Actual clothes waste is a massive contributor at the moment, especially with circular fashion kicking off, well, especially with fast fashion kicking off. And then on the right-hand side, we also, and this is where this campaign came on in its own, we wanted to support certain people where this was important. And this was why Vanish actually chose autism. I think there was lots of discussions that we were having, and we were trying to say, well, to whom would this be most important to? You can go to the next slide. And this is when we actually worked with a number of NGOs, Ambitious About Autism being one of them, and we understood that actually for 70% of girls or non-binary, the familiarity, that kind of routine is really important. And that's underpinned a lot by the favorite sweater, the favorite pajamas, the favorite whatever. But clothes played a massive role in keeping that, in kind of creating that consistency to also help with family life, which is ultimately, those who have to cope with everything that comes with autism. So the brand offer here I thought was just so neat. And, I won't go through the language here because I just think that the words at the bottom there are the most important. We really wanted to build a campaign where making clothes last, our brand promise, really mattered. And it really mattered to this audience. And with that, I'll hand over to Elliot.
Hello, I'm Elliot. I'm the creative dad at Havas London. I look after all the kids and encourage their misbehaviour. None of the execution is possible without that rigour, without the strategic rigour, without that framework, without the SDGs. So what's incredible around this project is that the start point is with the client. Unless they've done that work, unless there's that discipline, unless there's that clarity and simplicity in the brief, then there's no execution for us. So, we had an incredible framework to work from. We had a very clear enemy, and we had a very, very clear target to go after. So then it goes into the creative department. And you probably all know this stuff. First thing, get noticed. If you don't get noticed, the rest of the stuff is arbitrary. Will it motivate people? Once it's noticed, are they going to be motivated by it? And ultimately, is there a truth in there? Is there a credibility to it? Is there something about the honesty in which the way that we're telling the story? So we thought the best place for this to start, and an incredible challenge, because inevitably what we ended up doing was giving ourselves another client in this process. Even though we had a wonderful client in Becky, we decided to give ourselves another client with Channel 4. Channel 4 run an incredibly stringent and I would say the criteria for the Channel 4 prize is right up there in terms of the type of work that you have to do in order to win that prize, and the criteria that they ask you to jump through in order to fulfill the brief and the promise. In order to do that, we spent a hell of a lot of time doing research and insight into the area of autism and making sure that we were very on point when it came to telling our story. And I'd like to just play you a short film that we used as part of the pitch process with Channel 4, which was the basis of our understanding as a team, and a real kind of window into the lives of people that live with what I would call areas of hyperfixation around garments and fabrics and textures in particular, and how that can impact their day.
Mornings are always the biggest challenge. It's like a reset. She has gone to bed, she wakes up, and we don't know whether today is going to be a good day or not. It's those moments, actually, that I'm normally in my bedroom waiting to hear if I hear her cry. If I hear her cry, it's because something's not quite right. It's exhausting and it's heartbreaking to see your child struggle with emotions. And there's nothing you can do about it. My name's Charlotte, I'm married to Ben. We have two gorgeous children, Bethan, who is 8, and Sam, who's 4. So Bethan's sensory defensive, which means that she has hypersensitivity when it comes to clothing in particular, and she is incredibly particular about the fabrics. She has to touch and feel them and make sure that they feel right before she's prepared to wear them. Bethan became particularly fixated with a mermaid nightie. Once she put it on, she literally would not take it off. To Bethan, that nightie meant safety.
The reason why it was so special was because I wore it a lot, and I basically loved this dress. It's because I knew that I had it, and also that I would always love it.
Was it motivating? Sorry. Was it truthful? Yes. At that point, we knew we were embarking upon a story that we absolutely had to do right by. So we won the Channel 4 Diversity and Advertising Prize. Now the real work began, because we had to make the film. This was just a piece of research, and we have to defend the details in every meeting. This is how I feel every day walking into a room with clients. This is me creeping through the meeting room. This is you, waiting to tear it apart. They're fragile things, and they're really fragile things at that stage. You know, in its infancy, we knew we had an incredible insight. We knew we were walking towards an idea, but it was in its infancy, and we still had a long way to go, and we had to find ways to protect that. And as Xavier said earlier, really, really difficult conversations early on. I think this is a wonderful name for an agency one day. If anybody wants to start an agency, I'm here. These are the two things that I think that will help us when the German Shepherds are watching. Craft and graft. Craft, you know, lovingly caring about this work, and the graft and the hard work that's needed to execute. So I think the first thing we realized is we absolutely wanted to take a moonshot in terms of the production of the film. And I think Becky will tell you that, you know, the usual budgets at Reckitt and the usual directors that we're working with are not the same when it came to this project, but we all felt that we had to reach up, and we wanted to really take a leap and find someone, you know, that could take this topic, understand it, and then actually lift it up and elevate it and turn it into something that felt accessible and felt mainstream. We're a large FMCG brand. We appear in the supermarket. It needed to have that, you know, element of relatability, and it wasn't just a special little project sitting over on the side speaking to a very particular little audience. We wanted to speak to the entire country about this. So we went for Tom Hooper. Tom Hooper is a director that you may or may not know. He's a multi-Emmy award-winning, Oscar-winning director. He's been responsible for films like The King's Speech, The Danish Girl, and what we loved about Tom was that he had an incredible passion for the project in the first part. He had an immediate connection with autism through his family. He actually called us about the project. We were speaking with other directors, and I remember just before Christmas, we got this call from Tom saying, can we talk about the project? We've heard you're working on this project around autism, and I'd really like to have the conversation. So it was wonderful. We thought he wanted another string to his bow for his CV. Yeah, and we can put some lines there now as well to add to that. Tom was phenomenal, and from the get-go, it was clear not only was he emotionally invested in this topic, but he was going to bring that craft, that graft, that level of rigor and discipline and research and understanding that was going to take this story and turn it into something compelling. And like I said, really accessible. I think we were really keen to make sure that this film spoke to people, and spoke to people that may have been in contact with people that were neurodiverse. Maybe you were a teacher, maybe you were a carer, maybe you knew someone. But I think there was a point in the process where we wanted that to feel as accessible as possible. So, should we have a look?
Ash, it's 7 o'clock.
I'm not going in.
You are going in.
I can't.
You don't get up and get dressed now, then there's no sleepover on Friday.
That's not fair. Why are you punishing me?
Because I've got to get you to school, love. Come on, now please.
Come on, there's your pancakes.
Thanks.
Have you not had your breakfast yet?
She's on it, she's on it.
We're 1 minute late.
Traffic's a little bit lighter on a Friday.
Lily, you're so dozy. Can you hurry up for once? You're making me so late.
Ash, you've got to eat before we go to school.
Have a good day, okay?
I'm leaving. Hurry up.
Ash, where's your blazer?
I don't have time.
Go get it. Go on, go and get it. You've got drama today, girl.
Yeah, Fed lesson. Mum, can you turn the radio off? He was really annoying teachers and horrible ones, so I can't aim. Oh my God, Lily! Shut up!
Ash, what have I told you about the hoodie?
Oh, come on.
Laser on, please.
Are we already done?
Okay, Ash, let's have a look.
You're gonna fail.
That is exactly right.
How are you meant to do that without a calculator?
It's a little bit tougher for you, I think.
Oh, I don't have my overlay. I can't read this.
Hang on, see if I've got anything at all.
You okay, Ash? Mm-hmm. Every lesson is making funny. Oh, someone pushed me on purpose. I don't know. They pushed me. I want to go home.
All right, I'll ring your mum. You go and sit in the sensory room. All right, love. Let's get you home.
Dad, can you fix this?
Don't get a please.
Please.
Okay.
Wait, you can't see this, but I can? You have certain skills, like...
Why is it always when I pick? Subtitles. Put the subtitles on.
Subtitles on.
Ash, it's time to get up, love.
Mum, have you seen my hoodie?
I think your dad washed it yesterday. It's on the banister.
Are you sure it's not here? Lily, have you moved my hoodie? Obviously I didn't. I'm gonna check your room because Ash, I told you.
Ash, do not go in Lily's room.
Lily, get off! No!
In upstairs. It'll be upstairs underneath your... Look, wet towels. And your blazer's on the floor.
Mum, Lily's taken it!
Whoa. Wait, enough. Look.
Don't touch me! Don't touch me!
I'm not going to touch you. I'm just sitting here whilst you calm down, okay?
I need my hoodie to go into school. I am not going into school without it, and Lily's taken it.
I don't think she
She
has.
has.
I don't think she has. Okay? It's okay. It's okay. Calm yourself down a bit. It's okay. Breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth.
Ash, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
Build a cruise ship if you like, Scott, but the rest of us, we're gonna make...
I've had a few discussions with people about this film down in Cannes this week. I think obviously you can tell that the performances within that film are pretty incredible. What a lot of people don't realise is that we obviously went about a process with Tom to... I cried lots of times as well. It's okay. It's good to cry. To find Ash, we went on a real journey of sort of casting someone that was neurodiverse. What we didn't realise that in order to go on that journey and find that girl, I remember in one of the early callbacks with Ash, her sister came along. So that is her real family in that film. The entire family have never been on film before. They've never worked with an A-list director before. So you can imagine that's a pretty intimidating environment for them to go in, and especially with a girl that has a neurodiverse condition. So we had to sort of put conditions around the filmmaking itself, but also design a film that was based on Ev's lived experience. So I can remember coming to some early pre-production meetings where we said, well, we found this girl, she's absolutely incredible. We're going to put her entire family in the film. The 2 kids in the school scene are her 2 best friends from school as well. We nearly got the dog in as well. And it was really important. And again, it kind of goes back to that level of trust and understanding between the agency and the client, that they needed to come with us on that. We realised we were in a process by that point where it had to be Ev. So when it came to casting, it wasn't like, oh, we have all these options, let's go through all the cast. It was like, it's her or it's no one. It's her or there's no film. And also, it's her and there's no script and there's no storyboards. And you're not going to get some pre-read on the film in order for you to approve it and get all the stakeholders on board. We're going to design this film around this family based on Ev's lived experience. And slowly with Tom, we started workshopping with that family to understand how this situation impacts on them. How does it feel at morning, in breakfast? What's it like in the car trying to get to school? Obviously, we had the garment story built into the element of what we needed to do as a narrative, because we're ultimately here to tell a story, and the role of the purpose and the product within that is really important. So Ev's hoodie that goes missing, the sister that we spoke to the sister and we were like, well, how would you really piss Ev off? And she'd be like, I'd nick her hoodie. That's what I would do to really anger her, right? So, and siblings are siblings. That's okay. And so we started this thing of trying to sort of be as honest in the portrayal of Ev's condition and how she lives her life and how she navigates the world using that garment. So everything you see there is based on her life and the family's life. And I think that's a sort of, kudos to the client, because we asked them to come with us on a process that was like nothing else we'd ever done. Tom Hooper unfortunately requested that they were going to spend money like they'd never spent money before. So there were all these new sets of conditions around it as a piece of work that for us as a team and for the client as a team, we were in new ground. We didn't have any visibility of kind of where we were going, and that feels quite dangerous in a world where everything has to be locked down, everything has to be link tested, everyone wants validation, and there was this very, very free process around the creativity. But again, it goes back to this idea of trust and partnership, and what Xav was saying at the start, which was everybody who touched this piece of work was in service of telling that story in an incredibly authentic, and I know authentic is an overused word, but it was, portrayal is really, really important. And so we learned a lot about that as a team. I think, again, down in Cannes, I've seen a lot of talk and discussion about representation. And I think, yes, representation, whether it's in front of the camera or behind the camera, is important, because that is about being there. That is about understanding that part of that audience. What I learned as a creative, and what the team, I think, sort of went through a process, and especially with Channel 4, who kept us very keen on this, was the idea of portrayal. And portrayal, for me, is way more important, because portrayal is, once you're there, you've got to get it right. And there were landmines everywhere for us on this process. The language we use, how we present, the story. So yes, representation, but representation with absolutely credible portrayal of what you're trying to do. And that, I think is the thing that really sets this piece apart. I think it's the thing that the juries liked about it. And ultimately, as Becky said, it's the thing now that is actually having a halo across the business and is starting to, you know, bring other things that I don't think were the start point of the project, but that is definitely starting to show that it has got, you know, residual benefits from us having gone through that process in the right way. Of course, it wasn't a film alone. It was a hugely kind of, you know, there was a whole ecosystem of work that we did that, you know, was from outdoor and social and influencers. We had a huge exhibition on the South Bank in London where we took young girls and their garments and sort of almost elevated and celebrated their own garments in an exhibition like you'd see in the V&A, you know, like Bowie's jacket, but it wasn't Bowie's jacket, it was Emma from Croydon's jacket, and we told her story, and it was, you know, a really, really important part of the process for us to show that this had that, oh, my shirt is touching the, and also, you know, let's not forget, this was an idea that also did show itself in store. You know, it really had to work from the top of the tree right down to showing, you know, where and how it sort of proved itself. And the client also, as part of the Channel 4 competition, made a 3-year commitment to the NGO, made a commitment that they were going to emotionally and financially back this project. I think we were all very conscious that we weren't going to turn up, make a film and disappear again. It was a long game approach to the beginnings of a project that we were going to work with the client team, the agency, the charity partner, and then make sure that they received the kind of financial benefits of that. So for the next 3 years, all on-pack donations from Vanish during World Autism Awareness Month go to Ambitious About Autism. So all of those little extra pieces of the project were super, super important. That's my final bit. So this was my tweet, which I thought was a sort of nice summary of where we kind of got to. A client that trusted us, a team that wanted to tell an amazing story, a director that delivered, an agency that supported us every step of the way. This is important work, work that is easily the best thing that I've ever been involved with.
Guys, I think we'll stop there and take questions because we've overrun a bit on some of the slides. So, yeah.
Start. We need the mics. Does anyone have a mic? Here. I have one. Okay, super. How about right here?
Hello, I'm Natalia, and actually I'm super happy to see this because I used to work as branding manager for Vanish.
Oh,
so, yeah. And it was a super functional brand. Yep. So I'm happy to see it. And actually one of the things that I admire the most is the work that we used to have in terms of audience. And one question that I have is, did you have to manage isn't autistic like a super small part of the population? Why should we talk about it? And if so, how did you manage to tackle both in terms of internal politics, and also how do you manage to do the message to increase penetration? Like, I think it's huge in terms of that.
Yeah, so I suppose the first thing to say is littered throughout that ad are a number of what we would call universal insights that everybody can relate to, whether or not they are autistic themselves or whether or not they have somebody autistic as a friend or family member. Whether it's sibling rivalry or stressful moments in the house trying to get ready for school, or whether it's somebody thinking that they are able to make as much noise as possible and disregard the whole of the rest of the family's activities. There are a number of insights that we all relate to. But also I think it's also true that you don't need to be a part of the community to feel emotional and supportive of that community. So I actually think as we started to research it and share the idea more broadly, we realised that that it wasn't something that was appealing to the autistic community. It was something that made everybody feel something. I think that's probably. Do you want to answer the penetration question?
No, I just build on that. Do not underestimate the human factor in business. We are all still humans. Yeah, that's true. Right? So the conversations that this opened from, marketeers have to present their new products to the sales team. It's the dreaded presentation when they're going to get grilled by the sales team. This did not happen here. They were all humans. They came with us. When we went to the trade, equally, I think we probably got more than we normally would get because we were opening up the discussion as humans. So the human factor, doesn't matter if you are impacted directly or indirectly, something that is doing something that's trying to do something genuine, and you can act on it.
Over here, yep.
Oh, I go, okay. Hi, H from KFC South Africa. So I thought what you said up front was so interesting around anyone can make the idea better at any point in the process. And we have a philosophy in our market around don't over-tinker a good idea. Like, good ideas don't have a long tail. So I was just curious, and it's a question for all of you because I think there's a different perspective, is how do you manage keeping the energy up for the creative team so you don't drain them with tinkering with the idea along the process, and also managing clients to not over-tinker on the idea? Thank you.
Good question.
I'll speak to actually the client slide on that, because I think I sort of mentioned it at the very beginning, which is the strategic rigor was there with that initial lock when they talked about there has to be a credible role for the product that gives permission to have a purpose fight, and that, as long as you're remaining true to that, that gives you clarity in the brief. I mean, I think that if you ask most creative people, clarity and simplicity is extremely, it's slightly overrated, but, I think that that's kind of what we want. It's sort of, and that rigor that was there at the beginning in terms of the SDG, the understanding of where the product had a place to be able to be involved in the telling of a story like this is important. For me, and I think Zav spoke to it before, there was zero ego involved in this process. We were all in service of wanting to tell this story, tell it, credibly, and tell it authentically. And so I think whether you were in strategy or account service, or you were a client or you were a creative, it was, again, it's why I said in my tweet, it was the most important thing I'd done, because I think it was that real open sense of collaboration around it. There wasn't anyone really being drained by it. It was just about how every time someone touched everyone's fingerprints on that piece of work left a positive impact on it.
Can I add from the client side? So, look, I would summarize the leadership qualities we needed to have in this process was agility and courage. Agility, because we had not planned to do this. Normally, all of our budgets for creative and production are locked up front with a scope of work to the nth degree, which team is going to do what. We lock that into the contracts with the agency. It's an absolute quagmire of, politics, let me tell you. This came out totally left field off the back of the Channel 4 thing. End of the year, when all your budgets have bloody gone, by the way, right? Or they should have gone. If you haven't spent them, spend them. But, so we needed to be super agile, and because we had that vision, we were like, look, we're onto something here. And courageous, because, a lot of people were like, oh my God, to your question, hang on, this is just a certain community, are we going to get this wrong? If we overstep the line, we could have some backlash, and it's, so you have to be courageous as well. So agility and courage were like two massive factors that allowed us to do this.
I'll be very quick, but I think there's a difference between tinkering and making the work better. I think it's really important to understand that. We had lots of moments and conversations where people brought stuff to the table where we had discussions and didn't move them forward. It's back to that objective, what are we trying to achieve together, and this comment or input, is it going to make the work better? Is it going to make it more memorable? Is it going to tell the truth more clearly? Is it going to do the things that are going to make our creative product a driver of growth for your business. And it's that conversation where you have to determine between tinkering that is keeping somebody happy within the organisation politically because they want to have their certain sort of personal subjective point of view reflected in it, or their area of expertise reflected in it, etc., etc., etc. So I think this wasn't a process where that didn't happen. We pushed things away, but we created an inclusive culture where everybody felt able to be listened to and us to debate it out.
Suzanne, who's next?
Oh, hi. Hello. I can deeply relate to this as a sister of someone with autism, but on the flip side, I literally spent my entire high school never having friends over because my brother just didn't want to wear shirts because he didn't like the texture. So I get this deeply. My question is, so I understand the SDG goals, and then you're like, okay, how do we find like a really rich story or insight that we can like lean into for the familiarity or retaining, the importance of retaining clothing? How did you then like find such a rich insight? Did the agency like go into a deep dive and try to find a segment? Did the brand this insight is a hard one to find unless maybe you had someone in your life that could relate or identify it?
Yeah, I mean, the product truth is strong, right? I think there's a truth here that actually, whether we care to admit it or not, we've all got quite an intimate relationship with clothing. Clothing does matter to, I think, all of us. And then even more so, clothing matters more deeply to some people than others. So actually that didn't feel like a difficult insight to get to. Actually, I think what happened, and Elliot, you might need to correct me on this, is that we put the brief into the creative department, and one of the creatives said, I've found this insight about autistic children and their relationship with clothing. And then what happened, so full disclosure, my daughter is autistic, and it was originally a script about a little boy. So some of that making it better is about finding a tension in the story that would continue to make it interesting, and this fact that 3 times fewer girls are diagnosed than boys takes longer, etc., etc. We sort of lent into that. So we talk about our human library. So as well as all the research we can do, you all are in organisations that have wonderfully diverse people with incredibly unique experiences. So we lent on that. The woman you saw in the film at the start, she's hiding behind there, I think. But Charlotte's daughter is the subject of that insight film. We reached out to everybody we knew that could help us, and then we went and spoke to more experts. So it was an insight that built actually, and we built on it once we got to that very core one.
Thank you, Suzanne. Hi, Tara Egan, HP, not the sauce for the Brits, the computer printer company. I always have to explain that to my British friends. Really incredibly emotive work, so thank you. Where do you collectively take the inspiration next? Where do you go be courageous next?
I briefly mentioned the Channel 4 piece. So there is a 3-year commitment to this initial piece of the project, and I think what we're hoping is that, look, who knows, difficult second album, right? It's a strong piece of work. Now it's like, what we know is that the client has been buoyed by the impact, the response. By the by of that, we are absolutely committed to this process and this project for the next 3 years. I think what we hope now, having sent the sort of flare up, which was the film, that built the awareness, that's delivered a load of other pieces of impact and other pieces of work that we haven't shown today, but are part of the ecosystem of the idea. I think creatively, for me especially, what I would hope to happen next is some doing. So you'll see the stat about the diagnosis. There's a gap there, right? There's a 3-year waiting list for girls. We're going to go to Westminster about that. We're going to legislate around that. We're going to start actively doing pieces of work that will start to push into that piece, because I think when people then look under the bonnet, the next thing they want to see, having seen the flare go up, is like, what the hell are you doing? What are you doing now? Like, doing, not telling, doing. So I think that there will be some comms, and there'll be, hopefully, I mean, look, Tom's been back on the phone. He desperately wants to continue to work with us. Who knows? But outside of what we would call comms and advertising, I think we need to move it into a space, and we have some incredible next steps. You know, we work with some big retailers in the UK. We're actually quietly, don't tell anyone this, but we're hoping that we're about to develop a series of school uniforms and pieces of clothing within one of the big retailers in the UK, so that for me looks like something where we as a brand are starting to provide new answers around the topic, which is like, we know that these kids exist, we know that those issues arise, we have a product that helps. The next thing we're going to move into is clothing with no seams, no labels, no, you know, made from textures and fabrics that will hopefully, you know, start to show that it can help in a different way.
One more, yeah.
Hi, I'm Katie Taylor from Taco Bell US, and my question is, I think probably for Becky, around, in the beginning you mentioned that this work works. And while I've read the long and short of it, it's incredibly addicting to stick with the short side, because especially when you're publicly traded, you have that pressure of hitting your numbers. So would just love to hear from you a little bit about how you get that courage to make the shift to focus on the long side of it, especially when it's not been planned for, and how you really switch from a retail message to brand and then inspire others to follow suit.
And look, I'm not going to lie to you, this is still an ongoing battle. We still want people, we have a lot of people in our organization who still want to do the short-term side-by-side demos, as you were doing before when you were a brand manager. But I think it's a balance, right? Going back to the vision, we're setting up a vision where we need to change behavior. And if we're really intent on that vision, you need to be consistent on that message over a long period of time. And that is what is opening up the debate. We're not going to change people's behaviors or opinions with one film. You have to be in. I learned a new phrase this week, performative allyship. You know, don't do it to tick boxes. You're either in it or do it, but do it behind the scenes, and don't tell people about it, please, because otherwise, you know, you're making marketing incredibly hard for the rest of us as well, by the way. But having that vision, which is clearly a long-term vision, to drive the affinity, to drive the discussion. And mark my words, you know, as we now pivot into a world of Gen AI, I'm sure you've all heard Gen AI about 1 million times this week, as have I. But, you know, you need creative risks becoming incredibly stale over the next few years as Gen AI tools look to kind of pump out tens and thousands of creatives to our consumers. Those who can do something that is more long-term, behavior changing, like this, will stand out from the crowd. So it's not just a nice to do. As we pivot now into literally in a year's time, you're going to see it already, you'll need this type of stuff to cut through.
Thank you again, honestly. That it won, I think, Reckitt's first gold. Is that right? It did. First gold lion. So, and it may win more this week, but it's won 3 lions. It's working to drive the short term, from what you told me, as well as the long term. So it's working both. So, which is, I think, the basis of the wonderful story. I want to do a 2 or 3 minute, as we did last time, applied learning, actionable learning from this. Obviously, you're not in this category. This may not be it isn't your direction, but the principles under this. What about these principles can you reapply, rethink? Anyone?
Trust and courage.
Trust and courage.
As a brand, you have to do your homework before you go to the agency.
Yes, yes.
I appreciate the rigor up front and how much the Havas group appreciated that rigor.
Yep.
Their
storytelling, but you've got to do the doing.
Yeah, doing and telling, yes.
Clarity of brand purpose and brand position.
Yeah, beautiful framework, right? Really easy to understand. Sam?
Yeah, I was going to say tie the brand superiority to the sustainability goal.
Yep, back there, 2 at the back table.
Truly immersing yourself in the community that you're trying to spotlight, really understanding the needs.
Yeah.
Be agile to
Yeah, right. You got behind the idea. End of the year, no budget.
Members of the Human Library for the insights.
Yeah, yeah. Very nice, very nice.
I think being in B2B role, not underestimating the human side of us all is a really good reminder.
Yeah, beautiful.
Being good at arguing without falling apart.
Yeah.
Falling apart or falling out.
Yeah, it's good, it's good.
Lean into universal insights.
Yeah, yeah. Back table too.
Emotion works.
Emotion works, right? Short and long term.
Not just representation, but portrayal.
Yeah. Really good. Yes. Don't forget to be a human. Very basic.
Anyone can make the idea better across the
Yep.
process.
Not tinkering, making it better, right? Yeah. Good stuff. Good learning. Yeah, really good.